Welcome, everybody. Welcome, everybody, to Beyond the Bay Live. We are here today to discuss the Band Wagon. The Band Wagon is a wonderful musical. It is a 1950s musical, MGM musical. And today, to discuss this here today with us is I'm Larry, okay, your moderator and host, and moderator and host. And with us also tonight is Ted. Ted Kroll is our film historian who's on the Bay Theater's programming staff. Next is Rita Wessels. Rita is also a programming member of our team. And next is going to be Kevin. Kevin Maher is a film professional, and he currently writes and works on the top10filmlist.com blog. All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for being here today to discuss the Band Wagon. And just to let you know who we are the Bay Theater in Suttons Bay, Michigan. This is the Beyond the Bay Live. We are operated as a nonprofit by the Bay Community Theater Organization. And we are all volunteers of the Bay Community Theater Organization putting this on for you. And we really like the expertise that we're getting here to help join this discussion. For you, how this will work is that on your screen, either on the bottom of the screen or on the side, depending on what type of device you have, you'll see a chat area. And in that chat area, you can comment and post comments to yourself, to other people, not to yourself, to other people, and comment about the discussion as it's going along. And you can also then, we will also post questions. If you post questions there, we will take those and put them up for our panelists to answer. All right? So if that's how it's going to work today, and we'd like to get going with the Band Wagon. So let's start out and let's get the first question going here. How does this film compare to Singing in the Rain? Ted, why don't you start on this one?
Yeah, we talked about that 2 weeks ago, and I had a chance to see both films right in a row, and I said, boy, these really look alike. And they do look alike because they come out of the same studio around the same time, and they're all this bright Technicolor and the same kind of musical arrangements, and they have the same kinds of songs. I mean, interestingly, in both films, most of the songs were not original with the movies. They were from the early 30s musicals back in the 30s. But so how they are the same is that they have the same producer, have the same writers, Betty Compton and Adolph Green. And they have this, there's a romance in both of them, but the basic plot underneath that has to do with a show or a movie that doesn't succeed, and then they figure it out, and by the end they make it work. That's sort of the drama in the movie. But the difference is Singing in the Rain is a California movie, very bright and outdoors, and the Band Wagon is a New York musical, and it's all inside and enclosed. And being a New York movie, it also is somewhat more cosmopolitan and sophisticated, and it doesn't have that bright, cheery, up dancing, bouncy feeling that Singing in the Rain does. There's a little more melancholy into it. And Fred Astaire starts out kind of in a pretty dour mood, and there are other dour people in the movie too. So it has a different feel to it. So that's enough for me right now.
All right, Rita, how about you? How does this film compare to Singing in the Rain?
Well, I agree with Ted's comparison. I think also that the film, The Band Wagon, has about half as many songs in it as Singing in the Rain. So I think that contributes to the change in mood, Singing in the Rain being very light and frothy, and The Band Wagon being a little bit more serious. Also, the dance style of the lead dancers is so very different between Gene Kelly, very athletic and energetic, where Fred Astaire is more suave and sophisticated and smooth dancing, more elegant in style. And I think that changes the mood of the film as well, the different dance styles in the two.
All right. Kevin, what about you? How does this film compare to Singing in the Rain?
Well, I think Ted nailed it when he said that, that both these musicals had took existing songs and crafted them, as the sort of the bed of the movie, because they're musical reviews. So I think that's the similarity. And I think that the main difference for me, aside from Astaire and Kelly, is the direction. Stanley Donen and Gene Kelly just have a different aesthetic than Vincent Minnelli does. And from a purely aesthetic view, Vincent Minnelli's is far superior, far denser, far more dimensional and more rich than Donen and Kelly's. Their greatness is somewhere else, but Minnelli's is certainly in the visual aspect of the film.
Mm-hmm. Any other comments on this?
All right.
Okay.
I would say they're a match pair. I would hate to say one's better than the other. I mean, I know people have favorites, but when I saw them both together, they really are just. They never can be made like that again. It was just a unique piece of the piece in time where they could make something like that. The talents and the craftsmanship and the Hollywood at its tops. That's what I would say.
Well, I mean, you touched on it too. The Freed unit had a really amazing 15-year run, and if you look at any producer in a 15-year period and what the Freed unit was able to put out, granted it was all in a single genre, but there's differences and nuances and changes that evolved over those 15 years. But the Freed unit, I mean, starting with An American in Paris, going all the way through, you can just, Meet Me in St. Louis is the beginning, but just tick off all the way through to Gigi and later some of the Donen and Astaire films, Silk Stockings. Just an amazing run, amazing.
All right, White Fang, do we have another question there? How does the signature song "That's Entertainment" support the underlying theme of the film? Who would like to take that? Ted?
Well, it comes at this point in the movie where Fred Astaire is kind of like saying, "Well, how can I be part of this?" A ballet dancer, and the Cordova character is trying to sell this thing as being Faust, and then he bounces, and he has this great line. I have written it down here. There's no difference between the magic rhythms of Bill Shakespeare's immortal verse and the magic rhythms of Bill Robinson's immortal feat. Bill Robinson was a tap dancer, very popular back then. And so they launch into this song, and it talks about how, a clown having his pants fall down, a dance of romance, the lady in tights, the bride with a guy on the side, and then it gets kind of weird, where it can be the jury is out and they're reading a will. All these things can be entertainment. And what's interesting at the very end, they reprise the song, and what they do is they say, forget all the high tone stuff. It's a show that sends you out with a kind of a glow, and then say as you go on your way, that's entertainment. A song that is winging along, a dance with a touch of romance, that is the art that appeals to the heart. And then it says, there's no death like in Macbeth, no ordeal like the end of Camille. This goodbye will bring a tear to the eye. The world is a stage. The stage is the world of entertainment. So it's kind of this interesting thing of they do have this high class stuff in there. There's Oedipus Rex and all that. And then they say, forget all that. We just want you to have a good time in the movie. And that's what happens at the end. Anyway, and the interesting thing about this is the one song that was not, this is the one song they wrote for the film. Mm-hmm. And the story is, and I find this hard to believe, that it was written in 45 minutes, but I'll take that with a grain of salt. But it is, and it turned out to be the signature song for all these MGM movies, musical movies that they later made a big killing on when they made a compilation of all the MGM musicals. and they call that entertainment. And in my feeling, they should have called the movie That's Entertainment, actually, rather than The Band Wagon. At any rate.
Kevin, did you have something?
No, I think Ted nailed it. That they would take That's Entertainment and turn it into, I think it was 3 of them in the 70s that were just compilations of the dance tunes from all the great musicals. So,
all right. Rita, anything further?
Yeah, I remember watching those films, the That's Entertainment 1, 2, and 3, and that probably encouraged me to watch other films in their entirety. And I think that the line I like best from that song is, "The world is the stage is a world of entertainment." Everything that happens, whether it's on the stage or on film, and even in our daily lives, can be considered entertainment. And this film certainly runs the gamut there, where they try to create a very serious Faust play, but then at the end they have a musical review with adults dancing as babies on their knees. So anything can be entertainment. It just depends on our attitude and how we look at it.
Yeah, I agree with all that too, because That's Entertainment really says what this movie is all about. It doesn't matter whether it's Shakespeare or whether it's a musical or just a book musical or a musical review, okay, or anything, or it's a movie. It's still just entertainment. All right. Well, good. White Fang, do we have another question out there? Oh, this is from Sheila. How you doing, Sheila? Hello. 2 things caught my attention most. Sid's 22-inch waist and the incredible attention to colors. Yes. So many vibrant colors and so much attention to color coordination. What are your thoughts?
Well, that's Vincent Minnelli for you. He got his start as a set designer. I actually got his start in Chicago dressing windows at Macy's or something. Or what's the big store in Macy's? I in Chicago.
Marshall Field.
Or something like that.
Gimbals.
So, and he was a designer. So when he in all of his films, even his serious melodramas, there's a great deal of emphasis placed on color. And what makes Minnelli great in some ways is that his decor, the decorations, the way people are dressed has a lot to do with the way he presents the drama. It's not so much in the acting. He's not so much in the acting as the lines of dialogue, and it's the environment that these people in. And so this in the Band Wagon, it's exaggerated more than anywhere. Where there are these just dramatic color shifts, and that's Minnelli doing it. And the other thing, you have to realize this is the beginning of television in 1953, and so to get people to the theater, if you had big color movies, I mean, in the day that was black and white and blurry TV, but to get people out to the movies to see a big, beautiful sound, beautiful pictures, beautiful women with 22-inch waist and that kind of thing was the way to go. I noticed more her legs than her waist, I must say.
Any other thoughts on this? Anybody?
Well, I like the idea because Ted talked about it, about his the colors and the costume that Sid Charisse wears in the big dance, the girl hunt dance, is actually Minnelli red. So he had his own color of red that's deep, dark, saturated red. And it was dubbed Minnelli red. But I look at his, like Ted said, as a window designer, he was all about composition of the frame. We had talked about, earlier this fall about Hitchcock being a painterly director, in that he frames his shots like a painter would, and Minnelli does that as well, but with color and with texture. And it's sort of an aside, but Minnelli's film that he made right before this, the Bad and the Beautiful, was in black and white, but it won for best costume, best set direction, and best cinematography, which are, of course, everything that's in the frame. It also won an acting award for Gloria Graham. But even in his black and white films, he creates this these images of great depth and beauty. And I think that's the greatness. I too, like Ted, noticed the legs more than the waist, but 22-inch waist that's Sid Charisse. So,
Any other thoughts? All right. Vincent Minnelli's films always seem to be saturated in color. Are there other directors of the era who use color similarly? Color. Now, we just talked about that, and that's a really good point, because that was a good question, Sheila, because that really was a case of Vincent Minnelli putting on the show with the color. And also when you go to the one song where they have, is that Beautiful Girl or something, where they have the different women in their different costumes. And that just goes on. And I'm like, why? But it's all about the color and showing people, because it was blurry black and white TV back then. And the only way to get color is go to the movies, So was there anybody?
Yeah, for me, it's Douglas Sirk, who at the time they called his films like Imitation of Life and Magnificent Obsession, among a bunch of others that he made in the 50s. They were just women's pictures. But now they're revered as these wonderful studies of the human condition and where they were placed. But what Sirk did is he used Technicolor to its sort of the nth degree, where it's not the the bright flashy colors, the brightness, but it's more in the muted tones that Sirk used color. And they both directors can be seen to be directors of melodrama. Even in Minnelli's musicals, there's a great deal of melodrama in them. And Douglas Sirk I find them as two sides of the same coin in how their films looked, but also how they felt too. I don't know if that's a distinction that I feel. How you feel when you watch them. There's not a ton of joy in the world that either of those two men created in their films. There is joy, certainly, and there's joy in the Band Wagon, but it's not the first thing you think of when you think of their movies. And Douglas Sirk to me is the other side of the Minnelli coin.
Anybody else on the color? All right, on White Fang, thank you, White Fang. How does this film compare with a 1931 stage musical of the same name, The Band Wagon? Ted, you want to start talking about this?
All I know is it was popular. The Band Wagon was a very popular show, and it was the last time that Fred Astaire and his sister, and it was also a review. And so the end of the movie, at the end of the movie, the end of this movie, the different, it is like a review at the end of the movie. So that's the way it's similar to it. I think Kevin knows more about it than I do, something to do with the way the staging was done or something like that. But,
yeah, the staging was done, but I know the stage set, the way it was designed, there was a point in the movie where they go to the dramatic stage and they say, and here's this big round circular thing that moves around. You can go up and down 2 floors. Well, in the original Band Wagon on stage, that was a thing that they got known for. So they created a rotating 2-level stage with stairs and stuff for people and actors going in and out of rooms and dance up around and do a lot of different things with. And Fred Astaire and his sister, this is a picture of Fred Astaire and his sister, who's 3 years older than him. And they were very popular on the stage. They had gotten to be very popular and very famous for their acts. And they introduced that with the stages because when they were little, one of the very first things they did in vaudeville was they created 2 wedding cakes. You can see the bottom picture looks like their husband and wife there, but they created, or going out. But anyways, they had 2 wedding cakes where they were able to dance up and down and flick on and off lights and bells and stuff like that as they walked up and danced up the stairs and up and down the cake. And so this Band Wagon was kind of a big deal. A lot of the music in the film comes from the Band Wagon, the original Band Wagon. Like That's Entertainment is not. And so what's I think also interesting, as we mentioned before, was that the movie starts out to be saying we're going to produce a book musical, meaning that a musical written from a book with the lines and the characters, and it follows a story throughout. where the Bandwagon was a music review, and that's what was popular prior to the book movies becoming more musicals become more popular. And the music reviews where people go in and they'd have different acts. Like in this one, they'd have Fred Astaire alone and his sister Adele alone, or they'd be dancing together, and they had other acts come in and they did all these musical reviews. And that's what going to the theater was like in a music review. And what's interesting is that this film starts out as a book musical and changes, and at the end, when to make it successful, into a music review again, where they take some of those scenes out. And it also, I was just going to let you know that we may not talk about this, but I'll just mention this. I Love Louisa was actually a song in the Bandwagon that when you watch it in the movie, you go, why is this film here, this song here? They're sitting there singing a song, a German drinking song. And yeah, they're wasting, and why is this film here? And the reason why, because that was an original number in the music review. So
apparently they were going to call the movie that.
I Love Louisa.
No, it was the Bandwagon. Frank Morgan is on the show. He's the Wizard of Oz, you know, among other things.
Yes.
Well, I think it's easy. I think it's interesting because I didn't know that fact, Larry, about the moving set that they used in the 31 version of the Bandwagon. But it sort of makes sense because if you look back at the musicals of the 30s, primarily those directed by Busby Berkeley, and because the camera was stationary, they had the stage move. You know, 2 weeks ago we talked about Singing in the Rain and the idea of the Cinedance, where Donen and Kelly used the camera movement to create a more intimate experience. But because they were, you know, camera bound in the early 30s, they had to create the sets that moved to create that same illusion of mass movement. So it's interesting. So 1931, I'm thinking Berkeley, his movies were, you know, 32 through 36, 38, and he did a lot of that too. So it's interesting.
So it's kind of a joke in the movie where they say, here's the big stage that it's a real popular thing. It cracked me up. You know, it's like, yeah.
Right.
Rita, anything more comments on this?
No, I think you've covered it all.
Okay. All right. So let's go on.
I just throw in another joke that happens in the movie. There's a place where when the Cordova is first met to Tony Hunter, and he takes his wig off and he shakes hand with the wig. Apparently, Fred Astaire from the 30s was always wearing a toupee. So it was apparently there's a little in joke with making a joke about shaking hands with a toupee.
Yeah, that's dangerous because I believe he was kind of touchy about that as well. So that's funny that they did that. I didn't know that.
But then later in the girl hunt sequence, there's also a hair piece that's a clue that the detective is looking for.
Right.
It's a constant gag. So repeating gag. All right. So let's go on. Thank you, White fans. Let's go on to the next question. How significant is the dance scene in the park scene? How much significant is that? Rita, Rita, want to start this one off?
Sure. It's Tony and Gabrielle are not getting along well, and they go for a carriage ride, and they end up in Central Park, and there's a dance band and a dance going on, and they're kind of milling their way through the crowd, and then they themselves start dancing in the park. And it's a very beautiful scene, and the dance is amazing. It's I think of the two, those are my two favorite ones, the dancing in the park, and that is where the story turns, and that's where they start to get along, and you kind of get the audience can get the feeling that things are going to turn around here and everything's going to be okay.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else?
Sid Charisse says that's her favorite dance in all her films. And then somebody asked her to compare dance. She's one of the few that danced both with Kelly and Astaire and was asked to compare the two. And she said Kelly was more athletic. He did his own choreography.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing about Astaire was he had an incredible sense of rhythm, which made him a more interesting dance partner, apparently. So that's part of it. But it is the other thing about this couple in the movie, they're a mature group. a pair, and that's sort of what this dance is about. I mean, it's two older people, getting to be a pair, and getting to know each other, and that's a difference in the movie too. Is the mature, between the two of them.
Kevin, anything?
Well, David Thompson, who's a very curmudgeonly, I think he's an American film historian. He calls Charisse the greatest movie dancer, and I think this I agree with her that this is her best dance. I think the elegance of it sort of makes you want to see a more traditional dance that she did with Gene Kelly, for instance, because their styles are so different, Astaire and Kelly, and she did dance with both. But this is a straight dance sequence that's just so elegant and beautiful. The only thing that bugged me about this scene is when he stepped over onto the grass a couple times. It's like, I don't know, for whatever reason, it's like I want him on a hard surface doing the dances or something. So other than that, I think it's perfection. I just think that they both mesh perfectly. And as far as them both being elegant, I think she's probably 20, 25 years younger than him, or thereabouts. So yeah, she plays a more mature person. But I think Fred Astaire was essentially my age when he made this film. So
that's like 75, right, Kevin?
Almost. That's my kids, they'll tell you.
Yeah, he was in his 50s and she was like 23. It's a 23-year difference. She was that younger. The other thing with this scene too is they build up to it. It's the carriage ride, and they get out and there's the band playing, but they don't dance where the rest of the people are, and you wonder now. So this makes it more personal and intimate. And it also reminds me in White Christmas, where Danny Kaye and one of the sisters, they take the dance outside and go and dance by themselves. It's a different dance, totally. But in this case, too, it's building the relationship between these two characters. And they're both dancers. And this really comes out. It's one of the best scenes in the film, I think. So, yeah. Anything else? Okay, White Fang, another question, please. All right. The Girl Hunt Ballet is one of the highlights of the film. What were some of the inspirations for the story?
Well,
Ted?
it was mixing up. Well, here's this high art versus low art stuff. It was kind of throwing in Detective Mickey Spillane, and specifically Mickey Spillane, and seeing whether they could, make something glamorous out of the low life. The low life story of a Mickey Spillane murder mystery. There was something like that in Singing in the Rain too, but it also portrays the Sid Charisse character as being aloof and somebody, a femme fatale type of person, which is kind of the what was going on in these days and in other types of Hollywood movies too. But I think it's just sort of a big showpiece. One of our questions, I don't know if it'll come up, was, did the people have to, because of Fred Astaire's age, did they have to limit his dancing? And apparently in this dance, it was choreographed by a guy named Michael Kidd, who came out of Hollywood, and he pushed Fred Astaire into a different style. This was not his style of being so rhythmic and that kind of thing. And so rather than limiting him, it opened him up to some new kind of dancing that he wasn't aware of. But I think it's just another case of Vincent Minnelli being able to go over the top, because there's so many interesting color changes. There's very surrealistic kinds of scenes. There's some place where his eyeballs are popping in the staircase and all this kind of thing. So in a way, it's almost avant-garde filmmaking. So take that for what you will.
So what are some of the inspiration for the story? How does this connect to the storyline? How does this click to the story or whatever is going on?
What, in the movie?
Yeah.
nothing. It's just
Oh.
everything. Go ahead.
Well,
Rita.
I think when you go way back to the beginning of the film, when Lily and Lester are selling the story to Tony, they say the character in their play is a children's book author. But to make money, he writes murder mystery novels on the side. So I think that's the tie-in again to this murder mystery sequence with the dancing, the girl hunt sequence, is to tie back to the original idea of the two playwriters way back in the beginning of the film. But they're so far apart, it's easy to not connect those two again. Why that big dance sequence is in there. But I do like it very much, and I find it interesting that Sid Charisse's dress is a strong primary color, just like it was in the Gotta Dance sequence in Singing in the Rain. And she even wears a very fancy, wide, sparkly bracelet over her black glove in both dance sequences. So there's a lot of parallel going on there.
Mm-hmm. This is one of those things where it is very tied closely, because it's both Sid Charisse, but the style, the costuming, the style of the scene, it's in a speakeasy of some sort, and there's other scenes around it. But this is the dancing where it's very connected to Singing in the Rain in aspect.
Well, and the hairstyle too.
Mm-hmm.
I think you talk about that, the high art versus low art, Ted, when you mentioned that. It certainly is evident in this, and in Singing in the Rain, how they were making fun of the gangster pictures of the 1930s, with the George Raft character, etc. But then this one, I think, moves, like you said, to Mickey Spillane, which was, those dime store paperbacks of the late 30s, early 40s, that then transitioned into a darker, post-war, subgenre or movement in film noir. And I think hopefully later this year we'll do a whole month on film noir, because it deserves about 11 months a year. But I think that's where this one goes, is a more noir sense, a darker sense than what the beginning piece of in Singing in the Rain. This one is darker right from the get-go, and I think it sort of carries through with that noir element as well. So I think it's a very interesting dance sequence.
All right. Anything else regarding this question? All right, White Fang, we have another question for us. How personal was this film to Fred Astaire?
Well, I'm not sure. I don't know. I haven't heard what he had to say about it, but he's presented in the beginning of the movie. I mean, it's a really downbeat beginning. I was surprised. When I saw it this time, where his personal items are being sold, trying to be auctioned off, and nobody will buy them. It certainly would not happen today, that's for sure. But it would. And then in the car, in the train, he's also seen as a has-been kind of thing. But that really wasn't the case with Astaire. I think he was going to retire, and then for some reason he got pulled into the Easter parade, which was a couple years before. So what it did do was it began to get into his late part of his career, and I think at near the end of his career he was doing more acting kinds of things than dancing. So I guess it shows that he wasn't the star that he was in the 30s, that he was turning into something else. But personally, as a human being, I don't know how much effect it had on him that way.
Okay. And anybody else right now regarding this question, Kevin?
Yeah, Ted's right. Gene Kelly broke his ankle playing volleyball, which is how Astaire got drafted into Easter Parade. And he was retired there for, I want to say, a year or two before getting back into Easter Parade, having enormous success with that, and then carried on for probably, I don't know, another 10 years in musical performance after Easter Parade. So I think there could have been some elements of truth had Easter Parade not come along, right? Because he would have been largely washed up. Most of his dramatic parts weren't that strong. That obviously wasn't his strength. So I think that, it may have started that way, but obviously he still had the skill and carried that skill till he was almost 60 years old, for gosh sakes. I mean, that's pretty impressive.
Right. And I think the thing here is to realize too is that the movie is portraying an aging movie star, and he was in movie an aging star, but he ended up staying as a movie star later. And he was at that point in life to think about it. And when you think about how this stage at the end, it's a curtain call where they have everybody saying, thank you very much for being here. Thank you very much for helping us out. That's very, that's similar like saying thank you to Fred Astaire. He said thank you to Fred Astaire. Okay. And to me, that's where, because I think he probably had a lot into this movie and really thought we should be doing this because this was his original, it was originally, he used to start in the original Band Wagon. So, and I haven't found a lot about it, but I think that's something to think about. And one other thing I want to just point out here, because around this topic, I forgot to present this here, is that there's other actors in here this may have some connections with. For instance, Fred Astaire is playing an aging movie star, which he was, but also Sid Charisse was a ballerina, and she had appeared in Singing in the Rain and appeared in this, but she had also gone through or still maybe position herself to say, what is my life going to be as a ballerina? Jack Buchanan, who is the actor, producer, director, or whatever, he was actually doing that role because he's actually famous, not in America, but he's famous from British films and British stage. And over there, they have more of the lead actors actually producing the shows and getting the shows running and the more involvement in that. So he had experience in that, and it shows that he has that experience, especially when he does That's Entertainment, starts tap dancing. Okay, and that's pretty good. The other one is James Mitchell, the choreographer. He was an actual choreographer at the time. He's put in the show as a choreographer, but he went on to other things, dancing, but he also went on to doing soap operas here on TV shows. And I can't remember not All My Children, another one of those shows for like 20 some years. He did it just before he died. He pulled off the show, but it was just a few years ago. And Oscar Levant, well, he was a composer. And here he is doing what? He's a composer of the music for the score for what they're putting together, the music review, and playing the piano and everything else. And he was actually a composer, a very famous composer during the 30s. He was a friend of Gershwin. He composed music that were considered to be classical music as well as pop music or popular music, but he was a composer as well. So this is personal, I think, to a lot of these main actors in here. And I wonder how, when they got them all together, they were playing roles that really were similar to their lives at the time. And I think that's something to think about. Any other questions on this topic?
Just that Oscar Levant was known more as a pianist than as a composer. And the other thing about his career was he was a real kind of personality back then. There was this show called Information Please, which was sort of the Jeopardy of its day, kind of, where people would come on and then, show how smart they were. And he was a really important for that. And then later his mental condition just deteriorated. And I remember him from the Jack Parr show, where he was brilliantly witty, but boy, was he in bad shape.
Yeah. All right, White Fang, we have another question.
In this movie, he was a pain in the butt. He would come in late, and they really had a hard time with him there. And I think it kind of shows. I mean, here's another thing between the Singing in the Rain and the Band Wagon. I think the Band Wagon was a hard picture to pull together. And I think that in some ways you can see that. Most of the movies we've been doing on this Beyond the Bay thing, they were wonderful. Everyone had a great time making them, where they all were together. And apparently with the Band Wagon, while there's a lot of talent there, it was a hard pull to pull it all together. So that sometimes appears in films. I mean, very good films are sometimes difficult to make, and they lose some of that spontaneity and that joy that they might have because of that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Next question here. Thank you, White Fang. Similar to her role in the film, how did this role help or hinder Sid Charisse from performing professional ballet?
Well, she was really out of ballet when this movie was made. She was in a company, the big deal company in Europe, and that disbanded at the beginning of the war. And apparently she came to Hollywood and was known as the ballerina at the Freed company and the Freed unit. that we've been talking about. And then gradually they moved her into being again, it kind of echoes what goes on in this movie. She was pulled. I mean, it's amazing to see her on point. I mean, be a real ballerina and up on her toes like that. And here's another interesting thing. She got into dancing because she had polio as a child. So that's an interesting fact. But I think she was out of it. And I think once she got into Hollywood, she married Hollywood figures. Tony Martin was a singer or something like that. And so she really enjoyed being in that. She wasn't so much into the ballet as much as being in Hollywood as a star and a dancer there. That's my understanding. She wasn't much of an actress either.
All right. Another Sid Charisse question. Did Sid Charisse do her own singing or was she dubbed?
She was dubbed.
Dubbed. I think we all just went. I remember to go one time, dubbed.
Maybe you know about that, Kevin. Nita India, is that her name or something like that?
Yeah, I'm trying to look in my notes, my cheat sheet, but I can't see it right off the top here. Okay. But yes, she was definitely dubbed.
Yeah,
it's actually not even a very good dubbing either. I mean, the voice is quite dissimilar from Charisse's. So beautiful voice, but not hers.
Yeah.
Oh, hi, Linda. It's the question from Linda Wessels. Is it harder or easier to act a role so close to your real life role? So Rita, why don't you answer that one? Could you be a teacher?
Pardon me?
Could I
act like a teacher? Yeah, sure, I can do that. I think it probably has pluses and minuses. That if the role is close to your real life, you have personal experience that you can bring to the role. But if it's something that's an uncomfortable part of your life, that might be difficult. So when we talked about Fred Astaire earlier, and whether his career was waning a bit at that time, he may have been able to bring that to the role, but it may have been painful to do so because it was so close to what was happening in his own life. But on the other hand, if it's something that's really good, it could go either way, I think.
I remember I don't get it right because Cary Grant made this much cleverer said, but somebody asked him how it was to play Cary Grant. And he said something like, I wish I knew. I mean, for Cary Grant, his screen persona was different from his, who he was as a human being. And I think in Hollywood, this is what you get. You get these people on the screen that are, I wouldn't call them stereotypes, but you know them as a character. And that's very different from what they are in real life. Rock Hudson is a prime example of that kind of thing, that nobody knew he was gay until he died of AIDS. Well, everybody knew, but I mean, he certainly didn't play any roles where he was gay. But that's one example. I mean, but that's part of what goes on in Hollywood, and I guess all actors. Not all actors, but many actors, that's part of the reason they become actors, so they don't have to be themselves.
Yeah, and playing yourself is who you are, on the stage, whether it's a role you play in life or anything else. It gets very difficult to do that because the scripts usually try to go beyond what really happens with your life or what the role is. And that creates somewhat of a conflict sometimes. So it's not like you can hire people in the roles to act. Sometimes it works out. Where in this case here, I don't know if we have a question for it, but I was going to think about that. The very beginning of the movie, there is the shoe shine guy, and I have a picture of that. That shoe shiner is actually a shoe shine person, and he was actually hired for this movie because they went into looking into St. Louis. I guess I heard about they went into St. Louis looking, or some kind of train station looking what to do, and they saw the shoe shine guy, and he was singing and dancing while he was doing the shoe shine. And he actually got that role because he was a shoe shiner, and they liked him so much they put him in this. He eventually went on to become an actor and actually had credits and some roles in different things. And I think it's really interesting to say here that somebody did it because he was acting and dancing and doing this, and he went on to be a TV show. I think Sanford and Sons had a regular part in there later on in life. But I think the answer to the question, Linda, is does this hard to play your role. Well, it depends on what you do and how well it fits in. And I think it is harder to try to be somebody who you are and try to be somebody else, but not yourself. So that's just my thoughts.
What's his name? Leroy Daniels, I think.
Leroy. I remember Leroy. Yeah. So I guess, yeah.
He didn't get a credit in the movie, and apparently the reason for that, he wasn't part of the Screen Guild or something like that, so he didn't know.
Right.
But at any rate, he, like you say, apparently he went on and, or he did go on and had a good career based on this. And apparently Astaire was the one who really thought he was great, and then they do get along well in this movie. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. So the next question here is, where does the Band Wagon fit into Astaire's career? Where does it rank among his musicals? Ted, you know, you're the oldest one here.
We were talking about it. It sort of marks near the end of his career. Personally, you got all those great movies. I don't know. I can't rank them. I mean, he has those Ginger Roger movies, which are all kind of a genre all in themselves. I mean, there's about 5 of them or so, and they're all spectacular too, and spectacular dancing in there. How about if we say this is his best color musical?
Probably, yeah.
Oh, Silk Stockings and Funny Face, though. That's the
Well, this is better than them.
Yeah.
Okay, I feel it.
Okay, I'm not going to argue with Ted. I agree.
Yeah. All right, Rita, anything else?
I will pass. No.
Okay, because I like Holiday Inn with Fred Astaire in that movie. He was a bit of a cad in the role, but his dancing was fabulous in that movie. So I think so. All right. Lester Martin appeared to be not happy with Lily Martin. Was this a plot line not developed?
No, I think it was just because Oscar Levant was such a sour person, and he was having you talk about playing yourself in a movie. Oscar Levant played very much the kind of person he was in real life. I mean, he would cut people down. He was just he was honest, but it was the kind of honesty you don't want to hear, you know. And he was a very neurotic person, and kind of addicted to all kinds of drugs at the end of his life, and then this was near his decline. So he was just not a very pleasant person, and so I don't think it really had to do with the storyline. It was just his personality as a human being. Yeah, that was a good example of somebody who was playing himself in the movie, you know. And in all his movies, he's the only one he gets behind the piano is you relax around him.
So the question is, how did he get to play himself? Because that probably wasn't the script. How did it work out? And I thought somebody mentioned this one time. We talked Kevin.
Apparently, he was a buddy of Arthur Freed or something. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say, back to the question. It's interesting, you know, Lester and Lily are married, but Comden and Green, who wrote the screenplay, essentially, they were asked to make them married, even though Comden and Green weren't. So they're somewhat reflective of the writers. But it's interesting because Nanette Fabray, who plays Lily, wrote in her biography that this was one of the most miserable filming experiences she had, because of Levant being cruel to her and made her cry every day, she said, and really disliked working with him. So the fact that they didn't develop this plot in the film, it may have developed, you know, off screen between the two actors, who knows. But yes, Lily was not happy with Lester.
Yeah.
So.
And that, I have to, with this question, that was a confusing point to me when I saw the movie, which was the first time I had ever seen it. And he appeared to be mad out of nowhere, and it wasn't really explained. It was kind of hinted at that maybe Lester thought that Lily was siding with the director more than the composer, but that was not really developed fully because it was, I don't know, maybe it just happened spontaneously because of the way Oscar Levant is. I don't know.
Right. Another thing about how difficult this film was to make, you know, that scene, the triplets, which is to me just I love that. But at any rate, they were dancing on their knees, and it was just it took a day or two to do it. And Jack, what's it, Buchanan, whatever it was, he had arthritic knees, and so what looks like this big, joyful, amazing piece was really difficult to do and really painful to do. But they're pros, and they pull it off. It's a great thing.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Do we have another question, White Fang? There it is. Was Jack Buchanan, who played Jeffrey Cordova, a well-known stage actor?
Well, again, referencing Annette Fabre's biography, which I did not read in its totality. She said that Buchanan only agreed because he was a famous, as Ted mentioned, a famous stage actor in England, and a movie actor to a degree over there. And he only came to the U.S. to get his teeth fixed. So he would be absent for days at a time while he was having his teeth worked on. And that was his primary reason for accepting the role. So yes, he was well known in England, not here, but he had a purpose when he came here. He probably really enjoyed paying the exorbitant income tax that was prevalent in the early 50s in the United States as well. So he got his teeth fixed though. So I don't know if you can notice I actually meant to look at it again to see if you can notice during the course of the film if his teeth visibly change as he was having them worked on during production. But I didn't.
He also died in 1957, so this was near the end of his life too.
Yeah, he died young, but he started in stage and vaudeville and doing all that. Continued with big musical reviews, but also was in silent films, The Middle Picture Up Above, and he also starred Break the News with Maurice Chevalier. And also wanted to mention something here too. There's a picture here that he's in a ship captain's outfit or a sailor's outfit, and it's Brewster's Millions, and that's a film that we could end up talking about because that's been made over and over again. The last time I knew it was made with Richard Pryor and John Candy, I think it was. But it's a film and it's a line where you talk about how many times a film has been made. Well, he was in a 1935, I think it was film production of Brewster Millions. So I just thought it was kind of a piece of trivia that I thought was interesting.
Right.
All right. If you call this a backstage musical, can you give other examples of the same type of musical?
Sure. Well,
Singing in the Rain.
Yeah, that's a good one.
You're backstage for the movie production.
Mm-hmm.
In Warner Brothers in the early 30s, they were all backstage things. So 42nd Street one, or the Dual Figures, all that same thing. It's all about the
Footlight Parade, all those, yeah.
Kiss Me Kate was a stage musical put into a movie, but that's all based about the production of what is the name of that movie? Kiss Me Kate. Anyways, so Kiss Me Kate's about a troupe putting on a Shakespeare production. So,
but I mean, what's her name? Joan Blondell becomes the star of the show at the last minute, or I forget. I don't know all the detail, but those are all those great Busby Berkeley things. So.
Yes. And Joan Blondell should become the star of every show she's in. So that's my personal opinion.
All right.
Go ahead.
We're getting down toward the end. We want to thank everybody for coming today and listening to us, and all those viewers that do watch us afterwards. We appreciate it very much. We have one last question there. Last question today is, what we want to do is also to have you as audience members think about this and think about what it means to you, meaning that and put in the chat session in your comments or what you want to think about and offer to us. The song says that's entertainment, but what is entertainment to you? Rita, why don't we start with you?
Sure. Well, just like the song says, entertainment can be a variety of things. I think we have to leave ourselves open to what we consider entertainment and not let ourselves get boxed in too much, whether it's film or stage. I think there is entertainment all around us all the time. I think going for a walk and just observing the world around you, that's entertaining too. So open your eyes and your ears and look around and just be amazed at what's out there, and you'll be entertained.
Mm-hmm. Ted?
I'll put my 2 bits in. One thing I love about Hollywood movies is you get completely lost in them. I mean, for the 2 hours or so, you're just not yourself. You're in this other world, and that to me is the great. They're great. That's what makes them so great. Is that there's sometimes as somebody watches films analytically, and I start saying, "Well, I'm going to analyze this movie," and like 5 minutes into a Hollywood movie, I'm completely gone. I can't. I don't think anymore. I'm totally with these characters, and that to me is the entertainment.
Kevin?
Well, I would agree with the song and Shakespeare that, all the world's a stage. But in a time of reality TV and TikTok, the definition of entertainment has been stretched, perhaps as thin as it possibly could be. Because I'm right with you, Ted. You throw on one of these classic Hollywood movies, and I'd much rather be lost for the 2 hours than watching some reality show or a 30-second TikTok. So, well said.
Well, it's everything's entertainment, as Rita was talking about, and you guys have mentioned. So that's entertainment, and we want to welcome you to join us again. We're going to be please to be again, but we'd like you to please subscribe to the Bay Theater YouTube channel. By doing that, you're able to see and get linked up on everything we release. When we put it out, you get a notification. And what it means is subscribe, and then also turn on the notifications so you get all notifications when we come up with a new video out there or if we're doing anything special. So please do that. We appreciate that very much. And to those subscribers that have been there already, thank you very much. And what we are going to be doing for this month, next month of February, we're going to go into screwball comedy. And Kevin is making an actual video out there. It's going to be posted in the next couple of days by the end of the week about what a screwball comedy is. So he'll be posting something about it. We'll also have introductions to each of the movies. And then we'll be back. Is it 2 weeks from now? 2 weeks from now on Tuesday, February 9th for an online discussion of the classic My Man Godfrey. And 2 weeks after that, we'll be available for The Lady Eve. Okay? So please join us. We thank you very much for coming here today. We appreciate it very much, especially to the people who are live, to all those that watch it later on. We appreciate it. And thank you to our help backstage, to White Fang, who has been back there answering questions and monitoring the comments. Well, thank you very much. We'd like you to see you. I hope to see you in 2 weeks. Thank you. Bye-bye.